blessed, and we need to put Mr. Jordi Corominos, our cameraman, through the paces. Come on, let's get him going, because we can see Fabio's bike over here. We might as well go and have a good look at it and take a look at some of the advancements that Yamaha have been able to make before we get kicked off the grid by the cameramen that are wanting to get a photo of it. But some of the big changes, Lewis, whether it comes to chassis, engine has been a huge improvement as well. You do feel as though that this Yamaha isn't going to remain as is throughout the course of this year, with the concessions they've got, with Max Bartolini pushing them as new technical director. This M1 is going to evolve as we go through the year, and Yamaha are only going in one direction.
Yeah, of course, a lot of talk of engine, because of course Yamaha are free for engine development. They're not subject to the freeze as Ducati, KTM and Aprilia all are. I think they might be about to kick us out of the way and move their motorcycle off the grid before we take a close look at it. I guess a lot of the big changes are under the skin of this Yamaha. Electronics was an area they were looking to improve in recent times. They really have made a big step with that. Aero, of course, they're trying to catch up. Max Bartolini's been working very, very hard, trying to change the culture of Yamaha and also change the motorcycle that you can see behind us. It's starting to bear fruit now. You can see progress, tangible progress on the stopwatch and in the results. Of course, double the Yamahas on the grid this season with the two Pramac Yamahas to go with the Monster Energy Yamahas that you can see behind us. That's also making a difference as well, because they're getting double the data, and data from experienced riders in the form of Miguel Oliveira and Jack Miller to go with Fabio Quartararo and Alex Rins. We know how good they both are.
Yeah, not only riders with experience, but riders that operate these machines in very different ways. I mean, I know from speaking to someone within Yamaha just how pleased they were with Jack Miller's unique riding style, just to be able to bring them something different, a different way at looking at things, a different way of maybe progressing the bike. And as you can see, unsurprisingly, both Jack and Fabio, two of the most amiable guys on the grid, are getting on quite well. You feel as though that the energy, the camaraderie, the chemistry within Yamaha is really going to help them progress throughout the year. These are four guys that are very, very motivated, but also do it with a smile.
Yeah, and Jack Miller, of course, motivated. He's in the sole year of his one-year contract with Pramac Yamaha. So Jack Miller, in many ways, is riding for his MotoGP future this year, but that just seems to spur Jack on. He seems to thrive on that. He says, I like being on one-year contracts. It brings the best out of me. And Jack Miller's adaptation to the Pramac Yamaha, I think, has impressed us all. He's got to grips with that quicker than we expected, and certainly quicker than we were expecting after seeing his performance in the Barcelona test at the end of last season, where it seemed as if he was struggling. In Sepang and here, he's made a big step. He was as quick as Fabio in the Buriram test here a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, right. Let's head into pit lane, shall we? Because the reigning teams champions in the form of the Ducati Lenovo team are currently having their team photo, so we can get a good look at both Marc Marquez and Pecco Bagnaia, because unsurprisingly, those two, Lewis, are the hot headline, the big storyline coming into the new year, as Miguel Oliveira takes a quick look at a Moto2 bike. Fancy that one, Miguel? I think yours is a bit better, right? There we go. He's quickly saying that's not for him. He's happy with his as we move through and take a look at the Ducati guys then. And you have to say, Lewis, that if you were a betting man, then
which you are,
you'd be very, very brave to go against someone in these colours picking up the World Championship this year. Pecco Bagnaia, the number 63, a two-time MotoGP king. Marc Marquez, the number 93, a six-time MotoGP king. It's a phrase that you guys at home maybe are getting sick and tired of by now, but it is the dream team. Only two partnerships in the entire history of MotoGP have ever had more MotoGP World Championships. They're on arguably the best bike that we've ever seen in the history of MotoGP. They're going to take some stopping.
Yeah, and the two bikes in this photo here are nose to nose. I think we're going to see quite a bit of that as we go through the season when they're actually racing each other on track, because they are two fierce competitors who are used to doing nothing but winning in their MotoGP careers so far. Pecco Bagnaia, two-time MotoGP World Champion. Marc Marquez, as you mentioned, a six-time World Champion. And only one of them can emerge from this season as champion, but potentially with their reputation still on the level that it is now. Someone is going to take a serious blow to the ego and to the reputation as we go through this season, because one of them is going to beat the other, and neither of these two are used to losing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a legacy-defining year for both Pecco and for Marc. If Pecco is to able to win this World Championship and bounce back from losing it to Jorge last year, then it really does cement him as one of the greats that we've seen in MotoGP. As for Marc, if he's to win the World Championship this year, after everything he's been through, never mind one of the greats, can put an argument together, it cements him as the greatest. It is a legacy-defining year, and that is the storyline that we'll be watching throughout the year to see how these two not only get on, not only work as teammates, but how they compete against each other. It's going to be fascinating to see. I might just see if I can grab a very 2 questions. No, we can't. I'm waved away, unfortunately. I was going to be very
don't ask,
cheeky.
you don't get.
Exactly. Always worth a try, isn't it? Learn for next time. Rather than asking, just do it and then get told off later. That often works the best way. But anyway, we'll hear from Mark in the press conference later on, so don't worry, we'll get our fix of the Ant-Man very soon indeed.
And as far as these two riders are concerned, they have worked very well together in pre-season so far. We've seen a lot of conversations, deep conversations between Mark and Pecco in the Ducati box through the winter so far, because there have been some big decisions to make at Ducati. They've been trying to pour through the data to decide which engine they were going to run this year, which chassis they were going to run this season, and on the face of it, not a lot about this Ducati, certainly when you look at it visually, is different for 2025. They're running the 2024 engine, in large part down to the engine freeze, which is going to kick in essentially now. The engine that you start this 2025 season with, you will have to race this season from start to finish and until the end of 2026 as well. And Ducati did not want to roll the dice on an engine that they weren't entirely certain on that it was a step forward, because they're going to be stuck with it for 2 full seasons. So as a result of that, the engine is the same as last season. It's the 2024 engine, and they are certainly, we believe, going to start, as we also had the first Ducati crash of the season there a moment ago.
Christian
no one hurt there. Christian Cabarini fortunately lands on his feet. He got a laugh from his rider, Pecco Bagnaia, if nothing else. It certainly appears they're going to start this season too with the 2024 chassis as well. Now that may change because they're not frozen as far as the chassis is concerned. They're going to revisit that, we believe, at the Jerez test following the 5th round of the season. So we may well see the 2025 chassis back later in the year. But as we start the year, chassis and engine unchanged for Ducati and for Pecco Bagnaia. Marc Marquez, of course, was on the 23 last season, but he's adapted very quickly to the GP25, or should we call it the GP24 and a half that they have for the start of this season.
Well, GP24.9 was the phrase that Pecco Bagnaia used to describe it. And you have to say, we've had opportunity to reflect after what we saw at the test, and it's the correct decision. It has to be. The GP24 was the best bike we've ever seen, the most complete bike we've ever seen. By a mile. The advantage they had was huge over everyone else. 19 of the 20 Grand Prix they were able to win, including the last 17 in a row. It makes perfect sense that they stick with what they know. And unsurprisingly, when we put at the Buriram task to all 22 MotoGP riders on the 2025 grid, who did they think was going to be world champion? 2 names were a common theme. Who do you think is going to be world champion in 2025?
Me, obviously.
Easy question, right?
I will not say. Of course, we will try to fight for it. But I know that I have a very strong teammate. I have a very strong housemate, my brother Alex. Don't forget Martin. He's a very good rider, and Bezzecchi shows that Aprilia is working well.
I see everyone that's speaking about the dream team, everyone in the social media, so I don't know, to be honest. Hopefully an Aprilia.
The 2 favorites we know who are, for bike, for everything, for experience, from all that. That is Marc and Pecco.
The Ducatis are the favorite ones. They always race really fast on Sundays. So I think they are still very hard to beat on a Sunday race conditions.
If I have to say someone, I will say Ducati. I don't know who will be better. Maybe Marc, Pecco, I don't know.
During that winter test, Marc is really impressive. But, you know, Pecco in the race, it's very fast.
For me, Pecco or Marc?
I think the red team's going to be hard to beat at this point. They haven't showed us everything, I don't think, and it's scary because they're already so quick.
There is many names, and obviously favorite one are the red team, but we will see at the end of the year. You never know.
Of MotoGP? Myself.
I'm going to have to back myself. Fingers crossed, but
I hope me. But if I need to put something on somebody, I will put on Marc.
I would put some money on Marc because I think he needs this title more than Pecco.
Well, Marc showed a really good pace, for sure. His jump into the official Ducati is the rider with more titles in in the grid. I think that that Mark will be. Yeah.
I don't know, but my bet is for Mark.
I go for Mark for this, yeah. Maybe he's the best guy on a best bike, so yeah, that's the reason.
Many riders didn't show all the cards, so in my opinion, my vote is for Pecco at the moment.
The time will answer this question. Thank you.
So there we go, the thoughts of the MotoGP grid. Great timing that was as well. That's our introduction to start talking back to you guys at home. And unsurprisingly, Lewis, two names, as we said, a common theme. Pecco Bagnaia, Marc Marquez. I think the general consensus is the World Championship fight is going to come down to those two guys. Question I put to you this morning, I think an interesting one for everyone at home as well. That fight for third in the World Championship with Jorge Martin missing definitely the first 2 rounds, potentially the first 3 rounds, if not more. It's wide open for someone to take that bronze medal, you feel, at this early stage.
Yeah, you feel more competitive than ever, that chasing pack behind Ducati. We don't know yet just how far behind they're going to be. We certainly feel they're going to be closer than they were in the second half of last season, but for sure, Ducati still have a clear advantage. There are 2 riders on GP24s this year who've gone very well in testing, Alex Marquez and Frankie Morbidelli. Both of those, I think, will be targeting these early rounds of the season as a real opportunity to try and pick off a few early results while some of the factory teams are trying to get to grips with their newer motorcycles. Of course, we know the difficult decisions Ducati have been trying to make. And then you look at the group of manufacturers behind them, KTM with Pedro Acosta and Brad Binder. Acosta was my pick, not a very confident pick, but my pick to potentially be third in the World Championship, because he'll be looking to make a step in his second MotoGP season if KTM give him the motorcycle to make that step. Aprilia, of course, with Marco Bezzecchi, who will start the season, and Jorge Martin once he's back. And I think Yamaha will figure in that conversation too. We've seen enough, certainly at Sepang, to suggest that when the track suits, which this one may not, we have to say, Yamaha are going to be in a position where they might be able to pick off the likes of KTM and Aprilia and perhaps pick up the odd result that they were not in a position to do in all things being equal, a dry race last season. So Fabio Quartararo will also figure into that conversation. We haven't also mentioned the one other rider on a GP25, Fabio Di Giannantonio too. Yeah, a rider definitely worth mentioning. Of course, he does come into the year with those injury problems as a result of that crash on the first day of testing in Sepang. I mean, quite amazingly, he's going to jump onto a bike tomorrow for the first time since that day in Sepang. That's going to be his first physical exertion since that opening day in Sepang as well. I put to him during the media debrief today, I mean, have you at least done some push-ups, any weight training? Nothing, because of the nature of the break. The collarbone broke so far up on the left-hand side that when it was plated, he was worried, and the doctor was worried as well, that any potential aggravation of that would cause it to pop up and cause further damage. He's been told to just fully rest for the 18 days since then, so it's going to go into the unknown tomorrow is Fabio Di Giannantonio, but he's definitely got the talent, and you feel it might take 3 or 4 rounds for him to get into his rhythm, but once he does, he's going to be one man fighting for the podium on a regular basis. He has been declared fit, we have to point out, Fabio Di Giannantonio, so he is fit to go and fit to race tomorrow. So he was uncertain himself, as you say, just how much strength he'd have, but he did pass the medical checks to be declared fit. How far he goes into the weekend, what kind of level he's at, we'll only find out the longer the weekend goes on. But Fabio Di Giannantonio with a huge opportunity this season. I guess he would have been hoping that that 25 engine was the step that Ducati wanted it to be, to give him that extra step over the sort of chasing pack that are going to be snoring at Ducati's heels. But a 2-year factory contract for Fabio Di Giannantonio this season within the VR46 team, and once he's back at 100% fitness, surely Fabio Di Giannantonio will be thinking that he's going to be in that battle for the World Championship, and the race victories won't be beyond him this year. Yeah, absolutely. Of course, already has that one MotoGP victory to his name when he beat out Pecco Bagnaia under the lights in Qatar. What a memorable afternoon that was. Let's hope there's more to come for the Digia fans out there. Right, let's talk Aprilia then, before we touch on the after effects of Jorge Martin missing not only this weekend, the season opener, but Argentina as well. Let's hear from the main man, the boss down at Aprilia. Massimo Rivola joined us earlier on today to update us on the latest with regards to the world champion Jorge Martin. Massimo, obviously a huge shame to not have the world champion here to kick off the 2025 World Championship. Just firstly, can you bring us up to speed with all of the details, everything that's happened over the last few days?
Well, I think you all know already that the injury, the last one, that was a sort of double check to see that everything was fine. I mean, moving the the right arm and getting a bit of feeling of the left foot was okay. But in that check he crashed heavily, and now is really worse than expected. But now we need to do with what we have, not with what we don't have.
What happened exactly? What bike was he on? How did it all happen?
He was training with his motard. Eventually he crashed. I don't know exactly the dynamic, but quite disappointing. But yeah, it's already done, so we look forward.
Was it a training that you knew of, that you approved?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end, when you miss so much time, and you stay on the bed, and you have, as I said, right arm and left hand, you need to get a bit of feeling. If you can make the movement, if you have the feeling on the foot. And there's not much to say, really, just to hope that everything goes right now.
That was the idea, I imagine, then, to try have some feeling ahead of round one, because I'm sure there's a lot of fans at home wondering, after already suffering injuries, why he was training at that intensity just a week away from the first round.
Yeah, consider that in 3 days he would have ride a MotoGP. So having an easy bike to get a bit of feeling was just to get the feeling of his body, but shit happens.
Looking forwards, when do you think we'll see him next?
For sure, he won't be in Argentina, and then we will see. I think we want to have him the very good shape. I don't want to rush any recovery and put him on a bike that is not fit.
Yeah, we spoke with Marc Marquez earlier. He said he'd messaged him and said that I've been in your position. You're a young guy. Listen to your body. Are those words that you've been echoing and telling to Jorge as well?
It's good that Marc did it. Thanks for that. Marc suffered a lot for a bad choice at the end. So it's good that he passed him the message. Nice.
Just finally, after everything that happened in pre-season, this second injury again, how does it affect Jorge's 2025 World Championship?
I would prefer to see the new era with Jorge in the long term rather than in the very short term. So let's see let's do the count at the end of the season and even more in the future.
Thanks, Massimo, and give our best to Jorge.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So there we go, the words of Massimo Rivola earlier, of course, confirming the fact that he won't be at Tourmaster Rio Hondo for round 2 of the season. And for me, the big quote that sticks out there is we want him to take his time and to recover fully. Not only has he got a complex fracture of the wrist, but also a broken scaphoid as well, which we know from previous motorcycle racers having that injury. It's a bone which gets no blood supply, takes forever to recover and fully heal, is a complete pain in the backside for motorbike riders as well, because that's where all the force goes through. It sounds to me, not only is he going to miss the opening couple, but I have to say I'd be surprised if we see him before we get to Europe.
You can understand why Jorge Martin will be so keen and impatient to get on the bike, because he's essentially had no pre-season. 14 laps is all he did in Sepang. He crashed on 2 of those, so he's hardly had any running worth talking about to really give him a true idea of what that Aprilia is like. He's basically trusting the word of Marco Bezzecchi and Lorenzo Savadori to a certain extent in terms of what that Aprilia is like. And he's playing catch-up from this point on, so yes, you can understand why you want to be on the bike as soon as possible, but he's made a real mess of that wrist, no question about it. The second injury, much worse than the first that he sustained back in Sepang, which he near enough recovered from. He wasn't going to be fully fit here anyway for the first race of the season, but he was going to be much closer to it. You're looking at the crash that he had in Sepang right now. And from Jorge Martin's point of view, the worst possible start to his title defence. But Marc Marquez, I think, summed it up better than anyone. When he spoke earlier on today, he said that he's got to listen to his body. Marc Marquez knows as well as anyone, if you think back to 2020, that ill-fated double header at Jerez, where he had the big crash in the first one, then tried to race in the second one, was never going to work, and Marc Marquez essentially admitted he came back too soon from that injury, did more harm than good by coming back too early, and that advice I think will be ringing in the ears of Jorge Martin now to make sure he doesn't do the same thing. Come back when you're ready, Jorge. Aprilia are happy to wait for you.
Yeah, Massimo Rivola has said that. Marc Marquez, you'll be able to see an interview on MotoGP.com. It may even be asked in a press conference later. Actually picked up his phone, sent a personal message to Jorge saying, as you just said, I've been in your position, mate. I've made mistakes. Heed my advice and listen to your body. You're still young. You've got so many years ahead of you. I know, because I've been in your shoes, that you'll be desperate to come back and prove to everyone that you're the rightful owner of that #1 plate. But now is a moment for cool heads. And I think the good thing for Jorge Martin is he's got some very smart people around him. Whether it's now Massimo Rivola, who I don't think is going to rush him back, he knows that now, with no pre-season, missing the opening 2, possibly more rounds of the year, that any hopes of winning the World Championship have gone up in smoke. He's also got a very smart manager in Albert Valera, who's been there with Aleix Espargaro, with Jorge Lorenzo throughout all of their injuries as well. They will be giving him very, very good advice. So I am guaranteed, I am fully convinced that Jorge Martin will make the right decision when it comes to this injury. But you have to say, on a personal note, as a fan, what a shame. Massive shame, because all of us want to see that #1 out on track. All of us, having seen what Marco Bezzecchi was able to do with the bike, want to see what Jorge, the best rider in the world, can do on that bike. So we're going to have to wait a little bit longer. But boy, it was gut-wrenching when that news first filtered through.
Yeah, Marco Bezzecchi had a very good test here, as you say. He went better than I think anyone expected him to go. Set the fastest lap time in Aprilia has ever done around this Buriram circuit. So Jorge Martin would have been watching that thinking, yes, I'm not going to be fully fit for the first race of the season, but I've got something that I can work with. I think also for Jorge, he's in a better position to absorb this mental and physical pain than he would have been in the past. Now that he's got that monkey off his back, now that he's won the World Championship, of course, the motivation would have been to support that #1, because it's a privilege that he earned last year. But having won that World Championship, if this had happened to him at the start of 2023 or even last year, I think it would have had a much bigger psychological impact on Jorge Martin, because the dream of trying to win that World Championship would have slipped through his fingers. Now that he's done it, I think he'll be a lot more relaxed and a lot more philosophical about what's happened to him. He knows full well, he knew before the season started, that retaining the World Championship this season would have been a tall order. Not impossible, but very, very difficult. Jorge Martin now has time to make peace with what's happened, accept what's happened, and when he comes back, fully fit we hope, he could show us the world champion that we all know he is, and the world champion that Aprilia signed back in Italy last year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very good point, because we've all said that the progress, the evolution of Jorge Martin over the last couple of years hasn't been with his talent, hasn't been what he's been able to do with his right wrist. It's been upstairs. Yeah. It's been his development, both maturing, mentally being able to understand and take the right decisions, which is why it was said by Pedro Acosta earlier, Jorge Martin won the World Championship last year because he was the most consistent, because he was there every weekend and he made the right decisions in the right moments. So hopefully this is going to be another example of that. We've got around 8 minutes to go before we hand over to the very first press conference of the year, hosting the 2 Ducati Lenovo team riders in the form of Pecco Bagnaia and Marc Marquez. So before we leave you, let's touch on 3 rookies looking to make their debut this weekend. Gresini Racing's Fermin Aldeguer, Trackhouse Racing's Ayagura, and a man that needs no introduction here, Thailand's very own Somkhiat Chantra. I feel as though that battle for the Rookie of the Year title between Fermin and I is going to be a very interesting one, and Somkhiat is going to have his own battles throughout the year. But firstly, let's touch on both Fermin and I. It's been interesting to watch them progress throughout pre-season. You felt as though it was round 1 to Fermin, round 2 in Buriram to I.
Yeah, they're 2 very, very different characters in many respects. Fermin Aldeguer, of course, has come into MotoGP with such a glowing reputation. Of course, he was signed by Ducati before last season even got underway. They saw what we all saw at the end of 2023 when he was winning for fun in Moto2. They saw the talent and they wanted him part of their factory long term. They've got that. Fermin Aldeguer, of course, like Ayagura and Somkhiat Chantra, had the option of running at the shakedown, an option that they took up. And we spoke to Frankie Carcetti over the course of the pre-season testing. He's very impressed with what Fermin Aldeguer has been doing so far, the way that he's taking all of this in his stride. He's doing a very fine job. As you can hear, a beautiful musical backdrop.
Sounds
this
great.
First gear up of the season, just almost sort of teeing up a Hollywood epic. And Somkhiat Chantra will certainly feel like the Hollywood A-lister here this weekend. But yeah, as far as Fermin Aldeguer is concerned, He starts as favourite, I think, to be the top rookie of 2025, purely by virtue of the motorcycle he's on. He's on the GP24 for this season, and when we spoke to Davide Tardozzi at the end of the Sepang test, he said Firmin is going to be a big, big surprise this year.
Yeah, and I agree with that as well. He's got the package, he's got the team around him. We were just chatting with Frankie Carcetti there, and he's been incredibly complimentary, as you were just saying, about him. So I think the sky's the limit for Firmin. The same goes for Ayagura, though. I tell you what, of all the riders, all 22 on the MotoGP grid, I think I'm most excited to see the progress of Ayagura this year. We spoke to him during one of our social media midday lives in Buriram, and he's just such a cool operator. I am a big fan of Ayagura, and I think that he's going to really surprise some people this year.
He is. Well, he already surprised people back in Malaysia at the Shakedown when he did a long run, essentially a race simulation there that caught a lot of people by surprise because it was comparable to the best we saw from an Aprilia at the Grand Prix late last year. Now, of course, you're not necessarily comparing like for like in terms of track conditions, rubber down, all the rest of it. Of course, he wasn't racing against anyone either. He was on his own on the racetrack, but it was still impressive. No two ways about it. The consistency that he was showing was super impressive. He's just taking all of this in his stride, isn't he? He's doing such a good job of just keeping calm, keeping focused on the job at hand. He won the World Championship last season in many respects because he was the smartest rider in Moto2. He wasn't the fastest in many points last season. That was Aaron Canet. But Ayagura was smart. He maximised his points return on any given weekend, with the exception of Austria when he hurt himself. And he was so smart, so clever, so consistent. That won him the World Championship, and that's what Trackhouse saw. That's what Davide Brivio saw, and he has got quite an eye for talent. He brought Joan Mir into MotoGP, and a couple of years later, he was the MotoGP World Champion. So Trackhouse know what they've signed up in Ayagura. They've signed a phenomenal talent, and if that Aprilia is the motorcycle that we hope it is, if they are making progress with that motorcycle, which Marco Bezzecchi's performances indicate they might be, don't be surprised if we see Ayagura pulling off a few upsets. I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibilities that he could get into Q2 as early as this weekend.
I agree. I think I said that actually at the Buriram test, saying that he's my outside bet for Q2. Speaking to the media earlier, just saying that still braking is that area that he feels he can still find some gains, and it's all upstairs, he says, especially here under the heavy braking zones at 360 kilometers an hour. He arrives at the braking zone and his mind is telling him brake, but he knows he can go a little bit further, and at the moment he's just trying to tune that brain to go a little bit further into the corner. I mean, it's amazing what these guys go through.
He knows what he's up against as well here at MotoGP, because I put it to him in Sepang. I said, hey, so often in Moto2, you were the best, you were the master at managing your tyre at the end of a race. I said, is that going to be an advantage that transfers to MotoGP? He said, well, maybe, but these are the best riders in the world. They're all good at that.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we hear the Thai national anthem ringing out here, of course, preparations are underway for Sunday's PT Grand Prix of Thailand, where we will be hearing this wonderful rendition of the national anthem. You see, we give you exclusives here on Gear Up. You're getting an early listen of what you can expect on Sunday. Let's finish up by speaking about Somkhat Chantra. I mean, there's been so much hype, so much media, so much attention. Now his job is to just put the visor down and concentrate on the job at hand. Easier said than done. He said his target for the year is scoring 1 World Championship point. Let's hope he can do it this weekend.
You imagine the cheer that you get. He'll get a bigger cheer than the race winner on Sunday if Somkhat Chantra does that. I think for Somkhat, this weekend especially, but through the year as a whole, it's about managing this and managing this. Because you just imagine the butterflies that'll be in his stomach. His heart will be pounding at around about 3 p.m. on Sunday afternoon when that national anthem is performed in 3 days' time with a full grandstand up above him, all singing along. The emotion that will be going through Somkhat Chantra's head and mind will be absolutely off the scale. I just hope he enjoys this experience. It's, of course, such a steep learning curve for him this year. He's on the motorcycle that, it's harsh to call it the worst, but it's the least competitive motorcycle at the moment in MotoGP, as much as Honda are trying to improve that. So for Somkhat, it's just about learning as he goes. He's got a very experienced crew chief in Klaus Noles, who's working very well with him. But you're only ever going to have one MotoGP debut, and only one MotoGP debut in front of thousands upon thousands of your fellow countrymen and women. So I just hope Somkhat Chantra goes out this weekend, sees the checkered flag and enjoys it.
Yeah, I hope he does himself proud. I mean, just you explaining that, you describing that has made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. What an experience it is going to be for Somkhat. I didn't think his smile could get any wider, but on Sunday it may well be the widest yet.
Maybe a tear in the eye of Somkhat.
Absolutely. Good luck to him, and good luck to all of his friends and family that are coming here this weekend as well. I hope you enjoy in full Somkat's MotoGP debut. But our focus now is going to be on the World Championship fight. Ducati Lenovo team's dream team, 8 MotoGP World Championships between them. It's Pecco Bagnaia on one side, Marc Marquez on the other. Surely the fight to be world champion in 2025 will be either the Italian or the Spaniard. Which one will it be? 22 rounds ahead of us to find out, the first of which is officially about to kick off with the first press conference of the year.